So is that updated? Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so stream health live. Okay. So what am I looking at here? So I am getting a failing test when redirects to routes without names executes. So basically you have this first route, it redirects to second, it matches this path, but it doesn't have a name and just everything breaks, and that shouldn't be the case. And I want to say it's not in create the instruction, but it's actually in the build navigation plan step running the instruction. It calls this build navigation plan function, which leverages router.generate. And router.generate expects a name on the configuration. And it looks for that name. If it can't find the name, fails. So what I've tried to do is change this to accept either a name or a route configuration, because a route configuration has all the information it needs. Very interesting. So let's come over here to Discord app. So let's see here. It's very weird that the router redirect would want you to redirect by path. Well, I mean, it wasn't using generate. We just added this generate function. This really was for navigating by name, and navigate was for navigating by fragment. Let's see. And so object.resolve URL, this resolve URL function. Yeah, this is a mistake because we don't. Let's see here. Maybe the logic. Yeah, we're so we've been trying to support parameters and redirect. It's a totally reasonable function, but the router is built, back in 2015 without any notion of this. And so we're trying to kind of backport some stuff to support it. It's not working so well. So this generate function was just supposed to take a name, and it was just, as far as I know, it was just designed to create URLs specifically for the route href attribute. And so it differs from navigate here. And it's also on navigate to route. And then redirect to route as well, I think, uses this generate function. It's very similar. So we have this new instruction.config. It has a module ID, a route. And essentially we've got params. Okay. We've got params and we've got a config. And in fact, if I come down here, let's see what the params is. Params. It's empty. Okay. Can't be any easier than that. So if we do this dot recognizer, which is basically the route, it is a route recognizer. It's the same one right here. And we just run it through. But it wants a name. It wants a name. And there are no names because we gave it no names. Let's see. If we stepped through the states, get out of here. Get out of here. All right. And we get this handler. Handler has no names. It's just this guy here. What does the route recognizer do? For that particular code. Route recognizer is complicated in what it does, but it's very small. So we're going to look for that generate function. Recognize path, generate by name. So it's just looking for the handler. And it creates a path according to that name. Generation uses href. The handler. No, what are we using the handler for? Nothing. The route is found by the names. This is untyped. That's not good. Yeah. But essentially, we're just looking at the segments, and we're letting the route recognizer generate from the segments. Handler is just the route config. All right. And if there's a route name, and it'll actually accept multiple route names, which is interesting because I've never seen that anywhere, and I've never seen it documented, and I've never seen anybody use it. But it sets segments equal to segments, handlers equal to handlers. So the route name is just a quick way to get access to segments and handlers. Is there another way to get quick access to segments and handlers? In this case, I don't think so. If we come back here, we have the route recognizer and we have these states, and we can parse through the states. That we don't want to do because we don't have the path. If we had the path to parse, we'd be done. Now, it's easy to rely on the developer to provide names. If they provide duplicate names, if they do something silly, we send them an error message, you did something silly, try again. We could technically give it a name if it doesn't have a name, but then it's tricky because we'd have to generate it from something recoverable, right? So we could use, for example, the path, but if for some reason the developer used a duplicate path, it would be, they might want to do that, right? There's nothing wrong with a duplicate path. In fact, I don't think there's anything else on a route. All you need on a route is a path and a module ID, and you can duplicate paths and module IDs. You probably don't want to duplicate a path, but I feel a little anxious about generating the route name from the path and then introducing an error because of that. So we have options. We can give it a route name. Now let's take another look at the handler. I want to say that the handler is simply the route configuration. Route handler name, I don't think so. So this comes into play in router.add route. So for each route config, we call this .recognizer.add path handler config is route handler. So this handler is the config. So we could actually extend all of these things, has route, generate handlers for. So this is a huge if, and it breaks things pretty badly if it's false, right? We could make names a map. We could make names a map from a config, or we could introduce this.routes as well as a map. I'm trying to think off the top of my head if that would be a weak map. I don't think it would matter in this case. So we add the this.names thing. What if we did this.routes dot, okay, so we'll set that to a map. We're still in JavaScript land over here. Set, so routes is a map. I don't think this is going to work. Set, and we use the incoming route and we map it to this segments handlers. Bad boy. I feel like this is redundant, right? So if we have this, don't we have this for free? Because the route either has a name or it doesn't. What we don't get for free is then we'd actually have to iterate through all the routes. So we probably still need the names. I really don't like the way that this is just an object. That's fine, right? This is JavaScript. And objects do what maps do. But it's not clear the purpose of it. All right, so let's back up just a minute here. But the other advantage of a map, right, is it maps anything to anything. So it's a little bit more general than an object. In an object, you can't set an object as a key for an attribute on that object. So this is a little bit more general. So if there's a route name, one or more route names, we can map those as well. And in this case, it's fine because route names need to be strings. They can't be objects or anything silly like that. try that. Actually, can we just do this the readable way? Like that? Okay. So what does this mean? We're on the right path. We might want to do handlers for name or route, right? And this is a string or a route, configurable route. And actually on the router, it's as a route handler. No, that's the that's oh. It's not the route that's coming in. It is the handler. It's the config, and the config is actually the route config. So it's the handler. So we would want to navigate. We would want to, map that not by config, by route handler. This is so weird. Who wrote this? As far as I can see, number one, handlers is an array, not of handlers, but of handlers and names. Number two, it's always length 1. So it's kind of like a tuple, but it's a weird tuple. I don't get this. If there's only ever one route handler, this could have just been handler, not handlers. And we didn't need to create this object around. Well, there we are. It doesn't have names either. What is names in this context? Names is this thing here. Names is just empty. Parse. Okay, it's getting read into by this names thing. What's going on here? Oh my gosh, there it is. So it's pushing names. Parameter name and route has a default value which is not supported. Okay, thank you. I wonder if I wrote that. So it's writing this names array, so that's fine. All right, so if we come back up here, we want to associate the route config, right? This route.handler is a route config. This naming is so confusing. All right, so we have a name or route config, so to speak. All right, so let's see, name or route, type of name or route. Then we want this dot names name. Else we want this dot routes dot get route. And I think that puts us on a happy path. I'm gonna leave this guy here. Oh. No, it doesn't. I'm going to leave this guy here. If there's no name, there's nothing interesting we can put here. But if there's no name, it's very weird that a developer would have passed that in. This is more of an internal API. string or configurable route. Return, and we're doing the same thing here. And what are we returning here? I don't know. It's one of these things. I don't think they're typed. I don't think they're typed at all. Oh, handler entry. Okay. It's totally different, though. These are not, oh gosh, they're not that. That's just wrong. This is, oh, okay. Okay, we're in a little bit of trouble in this library. So here's the handlers. It has segments and handlers, I'm sorry. It is right. And it's not typed. Okay, that's why. Any for now. So we're going to try get route. That does this. These are not configurable routes. These are route configs. That type doesn't exist here. I don't know if that's going to cause a problem. Okay, route handler. Route handler requires a name on the config. There you go. So we've recently been moving everything over to TypeScript. The router is one of the last pieces to go to TypeScript. I think at the time that Aurelia was being created, TypeScript probably wasn't the best choice for two reasons. Number one, it was not in the shape it's in today, which is pretty phenomenal. You know, it caused a lot of trouble. You know, when customers came to me and said, I want to use TypeScript, I think we're talking like pre 2.0, right? I would say we can use it. You can absolutely build something fantastic with it, but it's going to slow you down. It's just gonna slow you down. You're gonna spend more time fighting with types in your transpiler and trying to make it happy than you are just coding. Now it's phenomenal. Hindsight, it would have been better to have started with TypeScript and keep going with it, but we did not know it was going to get that much better. But the other reason is because it was divisive at the time, right? There are some people who didn't want to use TypeScript. Today, there's some people who don't want to use TypeScript, and I understand why, for the very same reason. Even though it's really good today, and I do highly recommend it, it still slows you down. You still got to make the compiler happy. But it speeds you up in other ways. For example, here, where types are so important. And assumptions that you're making on types don't get assumed by other developers in other places, and then everything gets kind of messy. So... but it was divisive. There are some people who didn't want to use TypeScript. And to say we're building Aurelia in TypeScript would have made some people feel like they had to use TypeScript or they're not getting the optimal experience unless they're using TypeScript. So that's why we did it. But in retrospect, so we see things here. For example, this route handler. the only thing it expects is a name. Route handler is this handler on configurable route, but we can see the only place that's getting called is over here in the router. Handler config is route handler. And a config, here is a route config, and if we go to that definition, we can see name is optional. Route is not optional. There are so many module ID, I think, might be optional. It's optional now because we're adding something new, but the two of them are not optional. So route is absolutely mandatory. Name is optional. And that is an assumption we've made in the router. And when you look over at the route recognizer, that is not the same assumption we've made here. TypeScript would have caught that. All right. So we want to return this guy. It's going to return one of these routes.getRoute, which is an untyped segments handlers guy. So we can just go here and do this .getRoute name or route. Return not this .getRoute name or route. And generate can come from a name or route. And we're going to do the same thing here. This .getRoute name or route. And let's see. We need to make sure that there are no more names. And let's see, recognize is taking a path. And I think that's good. I think that's all we need here. So we have this new routes map created in the constructor that maps route configs, which are set to the route handler. Let's see, here. It maps route configs to these segments or handlers. And what this is going to let us do is then pass in a config to this router.generate, and that's going to avoid the issue where a route does not have a name. All right. Don't save. 2 people watching. I don't know why I'm typing. Welcome to my stream. I hope it's informative. Please leave me any feedback on whether or not you think it is helpful or anything. All right, so now that I've updated the route recognizer, what I'm going to do is okay, so this is still on the old version. It looks like I have everything here, so I'm going to go test. All right, so our regression, we seem to be regression free here. So let's try a gulp build. And let's see here. I want to say Karma is using Webpack. which means that we would need to replace the node modules version of Aurelia Route Recognizer. Which means that we need to take the... I'm going to take the disk because that's absolutely all that's used. Maybe. I mean, it's not rebuilding it. But I don't know what it's using for sure. All right, so I've updated the route recognizer from my local build in the router, which means that when I test the router, and I should still be testing the router maybe, it's going to use the updated route recognizer. And so I'll be able to see if my changes worked. Let's step into the route recognizer. We see the name of route property. We're passing in the route. I'd like to believe that no, this is the wrong one. This is the wrong place. I needed to update it here too. I'm going to step into the route recognizer's generate function as well. We can see it calls this .getRoute name a route. It has a name, but we're going to step into it anyway. And I just want to see this .routes. It's a map of 2. So it looks good. All right, let's get out of here for now. And I have this debugger here, so that puts me in the right spot. Even though there's a problem, I should be able to test it in the console and get a better idea of what's going on. So I step in there. And I'm going to step in here. WebSocket's already in a closed or closing state. Okay. So we got a name or route going in. Okay, something's wrong. I'm gonna just fix it. So this was not in router. This would have been, is it in router? It's in, so we go through generate. If has route, this is a mistake. Right, so what I thought I could do is just do name a route and then pull the name off the name of route. That was a silly assumption because the whole idea is not having a name on the route. Expects a name or a string. I'm going to leave it there broken in the TypeScript. This .parent.generate. So we'd expect at this point for hasRoute to pass. We're going to have to do the same thing here. And let's just... Yep, it's looking good. And let's see here. Name a route. Yep. Name a route. But all the rest look good. It's saying failed to compile. I don't know if it really failed. But I will lie to it. Which you can do, which totally is an argument against TypeScript. It's nice that you can do it, but you know, I had a coworker at a former company I worked at who would basically use those tricks to get around it. He would just typecast things as any whenever it complained. And then it's just like you're wasting your time. I don't want to step in just yet. I don't want to step in here. If you're not going to take the time to be diligent with your types, don't use types. So I want to say hasRoute should throw an error. Is this an error? What is this? Error. Route is not defined at route recognizer.getRoute. Okay, so those typos, man, they'll waste your life. Nope, not that one. Nope. Don't copy it. Oh, it's because it's locked on something. All right, stepping in. Coming over to the router.generate, stepping in. All right, so we want to step into this guy as well. Let's just make sure it's working correctly. This.getRoute, step in. So this is not this, so it's this.routes. And why is this still the same? Do I need to, oh, maybe it didn't get updated. Maybe that's my bad. Actually, I can probably just pop over here, get route, still the same. Something didn't get updated. Yeah, we're gonna delete the dist folder. Yep, I know. Okay. Recognizer. We've got a dist folder here. Paste it here. Let's see if this is going to work better. Why? Alright. Yeah, something's kind of funky here. Get route. Okay. Now, it looks like my change might have introduced even more regressions than it solved. But, to be fair, those regressions are for a new function that we're trying to build, so it's barely a regression. Computer, what are you choking on? Now it's putting it all on the Intel GPU. Okay. All right, show me errors. Yeah. In in So I have a feeling that it's not actually a regression. It's just that this function is failing for some reason. Maybe because the code didn't update still. Now, before I quit out on get route, no, it's there. All right. So let's come here. This code is actually workable in this context. And sure enough, it's going to give you the correct route. So that's good. And so has route is true. Child route is not in params in this circumstance, so we're using just the default route recognizer. Recognizer can generate on the name of route and paths. I'm sorry, params, I believe. And in this case, that's going to use that same get route function. So maybe there's a typo in here. Maybe somewhere I forgot to update name or route. Forgot or couldn't find. I found it here. No, this all looks good as far as I can see. All right, this is going to pass. That's totally fine. No change. Good. All right, so let's go back to info here and let's see where we're failed. So this is failing. What is it failing on? A route with name object could not be found. Huh. A route with name object could not be found. That is getting thrown. Let's see here. So that would be thrown, I want to say, in the route with name object could not be found. I think I made this change before, but before I do that, internally, it shouldn't really matter whether or not the route has a name or not. Internally, we should be able to just use that route config anywhere, and it should work. So the question is, why is it having a hard time finding this one? So first of all, let me remove that debugger. This one's fine. This one's passing now. Next, let me figure out parents to children. And let me break there. Let me find out what's happening. This one we're good now. This one we're not good. So we get in here. We get in here. Okay. 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 Yeah, and this is going to be doable. This is the bad part right there. You know what? And I knew that when I wrote that. It worked, but there was a better way. And in fact, now it doesn't work. So params may or may not have a child route, but if let's see, there's two conditions that could be true. If name or route is a config, then if name or route has child router, use child recognizer. Otherwise, if params has child route, all right, so if so how am I going to write this? I want to say let recognizer equal this dot recognizer, and then if go away name or route let me double check that that's the right parameter. Name or route has child router. So what this is a special route config generated by the route recognizer, I think. Or maybe the router. I forgot where exactly. But basically, it's meant for matching child routes. Another reason why child routes are just complicated. Either of these two should be enough to say recognizer should be actually this dot child recognizer. And I don't like the way I coded this. I'm going to try this again. I need to keep those comments, though. This is getting frustrating to read. Use child recognizer. All right, so I don't like the length of this. Come to think of it, before I quit on this guy, why wouldn't params have parameters? This has parameters. Ha 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 ha. Right there, boom. That's the bug. So actually, we don't even need to do this complicated thing. We don't even have to do that. All we have to do is this bad boy. And now we remove this dot recognizer too, and just use recognizer. All right, it's looking better. Looking better. All right. Look at that. Boom. Okay. Some of your tests is full page reload. Okay. There we go. Big 100. So that looked like it worked. It's a pretty comprehensive list of tests there. So in summary, we changed the generate function. I have to get rid of this because it's not a string and we don't expect it to be a string. We're just making the compiler happy. In summary, the change that we made involves accepting a route in the URL generate function. Because we're extending it, right? We're not breaking anybody's code. We're supporting a new way of tracking down a route or generating and tracking down basically a route configuration in the recognizer, the handler. And to do that, we needed to support a new way of tracking down a route in the route recognizer as well. And to do that, we used a map where a simple object wouldn't work. A simple object's not the best option here. A map from string to whatever would have been better, but this worked for the time. The main difference, as far as I know, I don't think there's a performance difference. The main difference that I know of is when you use a map, it's very clear what you're doing. When you're saying this.names equals an object, you're kind of saying this.names is some kind of thing, and we're going to give it some properties. But it's not. It's just a lookup, right? It's just a dictionary. So by calling it a map, you're saying, oh, this is just a map of one thing to another. It's very clear what you're doing, and that's why I like using maps. In this case, you have to, though, because you're trying to map an object. All right. I am going to commit these changes, document them, and call it a night. So let's see. Is anybody watching? Got 2 people watching. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about it. Let me know if this was helpful or interesting. I do want to help people get to understand the router and Aurelia internals better, as well as just developing in general. So I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate any feedback.